Hi everyone, welcome back to my RollerCoaster Tycoon Deluxe build series. This is episode 7, and in this episode we'll be going through Trinity Islands. Trinity Islands is considered the first challenging park scenario in the original RollerCoaster Tycoon scenario set. The land configuration in this one is quite poor, though I do find the land configuration actually pretty interesting and fun to build on personally. But it's poor because you don't get very much space, and there's no expansion room either. So on top of not getting very much actual park area, you get no area to buy and there's no park rights. And in addition to that, you get 3 quite small islands that are difficult to build on. There isn't a whole lot of flat space, and so you really do have to be creative in utilizing this land. But as I said, I really do enjoy building on this particular scenario, and we're going to have a lot of fun with this one, I think. I really wanted to expand on the whole idea of villages and complex architecture, lots of pathways, doorways, the sort of boardwalk look with this one. Given that it's islands, it's a really good map to go for that sort of a theme, I believe. With the first island, I focused mostly on the typical starting rides that I usually build on any given map, as you tend to start with them, and I don't like to put much effort towards research at the start, aside from researching any important kiosks or theming. And so typically the rides that I'll put at the start will be a merry-go-round, a Ferris wheel, a twist, and the steel mini roller coaster, and usually a slide too, as you can slip a slide in pretty much anywhere. So I find they look pretty good. And in addition to that, on this particular map I threw a boat hire in, and I make heavy use of the boat hires, as there is so much space for water rides. Though aside from the boat hires, I don't use a whole lot of water rides in this map in particular. I didn't go for any log flumes or anything like that. I mostly stuck to just flat rides and roller coasters. I just didn't feel that the sort of theme that I had really had a spot to put the water rides. Maybe if I had like a 4th island or something like that, but I just couldn't. I would have to like not do other things that I wanted to do to accommodate those types of a ride. And given that I've done so many of them in prior maps, I figured I would just omit them this time around. I used buildings a lot in this one. Again, given that I wanted to go for a sort of villagey look, though I do try to not occlude things, and I would say that the occlusion is less than what I ended up doing in something like Diamond Heights. The real challenge with this one is moving at a pace that I can expand the park quick enough to meet the goal, which is 750 guests and a 600 park rating by the end of year 3, which isn't very challenging. I did use ads mostly because I didn't want to expand any further until I had unlocked more rides. I do build a shuttle loop steel roller coaster later on to sort of accommodate the park goal, but I don't keep it for very long, and I remove it almost immediately after. I built that right near the end as I was approaching the goal, as I just wanted to ensure that the guests were happy with the excitement of something, and I didn't really have anything reaching that level of excitement yet built. With this roller coaster, I wanted it to basically go around the island area. Each island gets its own roller coaster. One of the island gets 2 roller coasters, but I basically wanted each island to have its own main roller coaster. And the second roller coaster on the other island isn't what I would consider a main roller coaster anyway. So there really is only 3 roller coasters that I end up building. With this one, I wanted it to sort of go in and around, and then under the Ferris wheel and then under the bridge. Finding a configuration that had the appropriate velocity at all points in the track was pretty easy. I always like building these junior roller coasters. They're pretty easy to build, and I recommend for anyone that's like practicing building roller coasters to practice with the junior roller coasters. It's really predictable in terms of how much velocity you're going to have at any given point in time. And it's pretty forgiving in terms of the G-forces. You can build flat tracks or bank tracks with it. It's overall just a very versatile and flexible roller coaster type. You can fit it into like really tight areas. It has reverse incline mode. Really great all around. In the center of the island at the elbow, I decided to put a building that would sort of act as like a barrier. So you would have one half of the island and then another half of the island, and this building would also contain the transport rides, which was going to be a chairlift and a boat hire, which would transport you to the other island to the west. Yep. The pathways that it comes configured with, where it sends you to the southern island first before the western island, I really don't like, and so I've decided to reverse that, and you go to the western island first before going to the southern island, which works a lot better for the pathfinding, as it always should be like furthest away from the entrance to closest. And with the way the pathfinding would be set up with the existing paths, you would definitely have lost guests on that third island, or the westernmost island. I mean, you can always, of course, connect a path between all 3 islands, but I don't like 90-degree paths over water. I just don't think they look natural. Usually you build a bridge in a straight line with 2 destinations over land, and not with an elbow in the middle of the bridge, although there are some exceptions to this, but for the most part, I don't like to assume that those exceptions would be required in a theme park like this. I figured that I would put the second food court in before I started with the theming, and also the temporary shuttle loop as I was approaching the scenario goal, which I just passed. Now that I passed the scenario, I decided it was time to just get started and go ahead with theming everything. Again, I approach it from the point of view that I would complete each island, like theming and everything, and then move on to the next island. So it would sort of be like I would lay out everything, block everything out, put the rides in, put the roller coasters in, do the pathing, then set up the sort of inner theming, and then finally complete with the outer theming. The main feature that I wanted to sort of put into the park in terms of aesthetic was going to be walkways, so seaside walkways, bridges, those types of things, and so that was where I put most of my focus. I wanted every island to have seaside walkways, which I thought would be kind of neat, starting with the brick and asphalt bridge. Well, I guess it's not asphalt. I guess that would be cement. The black is asphalt. And then moving into the first island, which was going to have primarily just the asphalt as the main walkway, and then the dirt path as the secondary walkway. I decided I would stick with a pretty muted color scheme this time around, given that in Bumley Beach I had used quite colorful color scheme, and also in Evergreen Gardens the Roman color scheme, while I wouldn't call it colorful, it certainly wasn't drab. But with this one being a piratey tavern, I decided I would go with mostly browns and blacks, which I think works pretty well overall. I hadn't done much with black yet, so there's a lot of black in this scenario in the end, especially on the third island. A lot of fountains in this one. I really wanted to keep things on different levels, so I utilize, rides sitting on platforms up above pathways quite a bit. Again, it adds a lot of texture, I find. Sort of like in Bumley Beach, how I like to put walls against the roller coaster, which adds a lot of texture and it gives you a little bit more to look at than just support. And it's the same thing with putting rides up on platforms, or utilizing buildings as entrances to rides and things like that. Even if they're flat rides, having just a little building there to sort of accent the ride, I think really helps to just give it a little bit more character than if you just build it flat with just the queue and that's it. I wanted to utilize both under the path as well. So there's a number of rides that I stick on the side of the island. But, whereas a lot of builds that I see on this map tend to do things pretty too straight to the point. You'll put something on the edge of the island and then just put a path directly to the main path to the thing that's on the edge. I decided that I would utilize the center path to help hide some of those things and just make it a little bit more interesting, like it was sort of a boardwalk that would be up above the main attractions down below. I didn't actually intend for that pirate ship to be one tile above. When I had built it, I had originally wanted it to be on the water, but then it built like that, and I was like, oh, how did that happen? And then, there was a piece of land that I had just on the corner of it that I didn't notice that caused it to happen. But in the end, I decided that I actually liked it like that, and so I just kept it as is. And in the end, I actually think it ended up working out better just due to the way that the queue connects to it and stuff. It gives it a nice little platform, and I didn't have to go down one more tile, so everything just fit nicely in that area. I thought the triple arch at the base of the brick sort of tower building there was pretty cool. Once again, I was going for sort of the Lego Imperial Pirate look. I utilized that once already in Diamond Heights, so I thought I would expand on that here. Mostly just because with the mining town theme, it works really well. You know, you get the bricks in those types of colors, and there isn't a whole lot else. You know, you can do colorful, you can do drab, and there's not much in between. So in this case, we're going on drab. Sometimes when I pause the game like that, it's just because I'm thinking, and I actually do that a lot. Most of it gets cut. But sometimes the game will just sit there for like half an hour on pause, and I'll go do something else while I think about what it is that I'm going to do next. So I'm very deliberate when I build in this game. It all looks like I'm just sort of going at it, you know, in one long stream. But that's not really what happens when I build these parks. I build one thing and then I take a break while I think about the next thing. Although that's not always the case. Sometimes I'm thinking about the next thing while I'm building the current thing, though I don't like to do that because often I will not be paying attention to the current thing because I'm spending too much brain power thinking about the next thing. So to make sure that I do a really good job on the current thing, I want to make sure that I don't think about the next thing, but sometimes I can't help it and I just get excited. But yeah, usually when I'm building, you know, it'll be like I build one ride or one set of scenery. Usually it goes like ride or scenery, so it's like I'll expand the infrastructure and then take a break and then come back and do the scenery. Or if I'm doing the scenery, you know, after I'm done the scenery, I'll kind of take a break and come back and start on the next leg of infrastructure. And I just go back and forth like that, which is why I don't break up my videos to make it easy to scroll through, like, oh, I'm building this ride or I'm building this ride, or, you know, and section it up like that, because ultimately I'm building everything at once and I don't want to sort of have to worry about you know, missing stuff or having to like arrange things or tag things, like, you know, car ride part 1, car ride part 2, car ride part 3, all sporadically throughout the video. I don't think it would really add anything, and it would add a lot of post-processing time to what is already a fairly lengthy endeavor whenever I make one of these videos. So I decided that the better way to go about it would be just to have the you know, single runtime beginning to end. You know, it's sort of a story. You just start with nothing, or in a lot of scenarios anyway, we're going to start with nothing, although not always, but you know, and then end up with something nice to show at the end of it. The final major ride that I wanted on the first island was going to be the car ride. That's not including the transport rides, which I also build a few of those. Although in this case I do the transport rides a little bit different than I have in the past. I actually utilize a shuttle monorail, although I have used them in the past, but what's different this time is that I actually keep it in shuttle mode instead of going to the continuous circuit mode once I have more of the track complete. In this case, the monorail is designed as a shuttle monorail, which is useful in certain circumstances, and this is one of those circumstances where you have a short distance to travel, and because of the short distance, the shuttle is not such a big deal. And also having two stations, similar to with the chairlift, wanting to only have two stations, though you can do more stations, but two is ideal, as otherwise you end up with the middle station being very unbalanced in comparison to the other two, and the same is true for the monorail as well. Having the two transport rides allowed me to keep the path disconnected between the first island and the scenario second island, but what becomes the third island, or the southernmost island, by having the monorail and the boat hire transporting between them at the easternmost position and the northernmost position of the other island, allows me to keep the path from having to reconnect the path rather, and without worrying too much about lost guests, because guests that wants to leave the park will use a transport ride if it is free. I always set my transport rides to free for that reason, and as you'll notice in a lot of my builds, I usually have a transport station at the far reaches of the park, and the reason for that is usually to catch any guest that happens to want to leave the park from that position. This one building allowed me to use a path canopy. That's something I don't typically do unless I can actually make the path above a usable path, and in this case I was actually able to do so. I was quite happy with how that monorail station building turned out. I think it looks quite nice, especially with the sort of boardwalk along the edges of it. I don't actually end up completing the monorail for some time. I put in this boat hire, and this boat hire is going to act as the second transport ride between these two islands, though I don't put the second station until later when I do complete the monorail as well. Until then, I just leave the boat hire as sort of a ride for people to use. So until I turn it into a transport ride, I actually do charge for it. Just $1 though. At some point I do change the park to be a park entrance fee park instead of a ride fee park, but usually I do that at around 1,000 guests. I think I did it at like 1,200 guests in the case of Trinity Islands here. I thought that chairlift was pretty cool in the end. Not very often you get a nice little short chairlift like that. For this island, I wanted it to be denser than the first island, and the connecting path would be part of the monorail and boat hire transport building. I was debating having the building path be separately connected into the main path, like outside of the building, but ultimately just from a design perspective, it ended up working better that the main path would go right through the building itself, which is, it's fine. It's not exactly what I wanted, but pretty close. This island would host a steel roller coaster and a suspended single rail roller coaster, which the two I wanted to sort of combine in a big spaghetti pattern. As I haven't done much roller coaster spaghetti in this build series yet, so decided would go for roller coaster spaghetti on this island. I do a standard inverted roller coaster on the third island. For this island, I continue the brick path all the way around, well, almost all the way around except for this one corner here, but otherwise I wanted it to go around the entire perimeter of the island. And same with the third island, I do the same thing there, where for like 90% of the island there's a nice like sort of dirt path boulevard that goes around the edges of it. And this is to, of course, help with mobility, and it looks nice, and it helps to keep the island available for building, except for the main path there that I put, which is sort of host to the food court, as every island I wanted to have a food court. But aside from that, I try to keep most of the island terrain available for rides of some sort, or a building that acts as a station for a ride. Figured that would be a good spot for the observation tower, with good visibility of all three islands. Now I'm beginning the suspended single rail roller coaster. This was a fun one to build. I was kind of debating doing something like I had done in Evergreen Gardens with the water slide, where like it would go in and out of buildings kind of like underneath, and then I would have the steel roller coaster above. In the end, though, it just didn't end up working out that way. I needed more height out of the roller coaster, and I didn't want to have buildings that were that tall. So it ends up sort of hovering above the buildings, but below the steel roller coaster, which also has an interesting look to it, I think. It's not, quite what I thought of when I was, thinking that I would build one of these on this island, but pretty close. Of course, the support requirement for this particular roller coaster actually ended up sort of directly leaning into the design of the island as a whole, which is kind of how I like to design parks and design a lot of things in my life, actually, even when it comes to software engineering and stuff that I do professionally. It's really good to lean into stuff that's sort of established for you. Like, don't fight against it. Don't pee against the wind, type of a thing. Like, try to play into things. And so, in the case of this one coaster, it forced me to raise a bunch of land just to get the minimum height requirement for the upper sort of sweeping turn there. And so utilizing that, I end up using it for a flat ride later on, and a nice boulevard and things like that. So that's probably one of my top design recommendations when playing this game is when you're looking at something, when you're looking at like a piece of land and you want to think of like a theme, or even more than a theme, like you want to think of the overall design, because I don't really go into things looking like I'm going to build a ride and then I'm going to build a theme. I look at a piece of land and it's like, okay, how can I, turn this into some sort of, I consider the architecture, I consider the ride, and I consider the theming all at the same time. I want them all to sort of work off each other. And so, when I look at a particular piece of land, or I'm looking at solving a particular problem, I don't look at them as independent things to be solved. Like I look at theming as part of my problem-solving toolkit. And a good example of this would be like with Diamond Heights, with the use of castles and stuff to sort of work around the existing rides and the restrictions that I had built for myself. So that's one example of taking sort of a restriction or something that you have to work around and turning it into something that works in your favor, or plays into the larger picture of what you're trying to build. And so the same thing here. Given that I had to raise that land anyway, I tried to do it in a way that would work with the end goal that I had in mind. So I was, that's also a case of me thinking ahead and designing stuff when I also probably shouldn't be, because I was thinking, okay, what am I going to put on this particular piece of land, and what's the flat ride going to look like, and which one is it going to be, which ultimately I chose the space shot for that particular piece of land, which I do later on. I just gave it away, but that's irrelevant. And so, yeah. This was a fun steel roller coaster to build as well. It was pretty easy. I wanted to have the loop going around the track there, and then having it kind of go around the island as well. And then once the housing and the buildings and the theming and stuff is in place, it looks pretty interesting. Again, going for the sort of black, gray, drab, brown, those types of color themes. Finally working to complete the perimeter path, and also extending the bridge now to the third island. I decided I'd put the bridge through the loop and put a second loop also on the third island. So both sides of the path end up having a loop around them, one from the steel roller coaster and one from the inverted roller coaster. I was pretty happy with how this side of the island ended up looking. The boardwalk was really nice, good connectivity. I was really happy that I was able to fit the steel roller coaster in there. I actually wasn't sure if I would be able to utilize that area as a station, or if I would have to build another station. But once I was looking at it, I was really happy that I'd be able to stick that in there, especially since the incline is sort of like, opposite of the suspended single roller coaster. incline. So when they're going up the chain lifts, if you can time it where they're going up the chain lift together, you know, they'll pass sort of going opposite directions. The final ride that I built on this island was the what is it? Motion simulator. Yeah, that's what that is. Huh, it wasn't coming to my brain for a moment there, the words. But yeah, the motion simulator, and that pretty much completes the ride set for this island. I just focus now on theming. I think out of all the islands, this is definitely my favorite of the three. I really like the way that the roller coaster tracks end up, you know, going all over. The two towers really complement each other, and it's very busy. A lot is going on this island. It does a lot in a small area. Also, the architecture holding the observation tower with the connectivity for the bridge to the first island, and then also the connectivity to the boardwalk, I think is really neat. I wanted to keep a little bit of green, but not very much green. I definitely wanted to keep sort of the more tropical tavern type look with the beaches and the desert, but also needed the green. Would have been nice if I had a jungle theme or jungle-like trees and stuff. That would have been pretty cool, but really the main challenge with the green was to put it in areas where it would be natural, where it didn't stick out, and so that it would complement the brown. So I wanted it to sort of like separate the buildings and stuff, and I didn't want to use a whole bunch of flower beds, though. I stuck mostly to the bushes, the small bushes. I didn't want to use a whole lot of big trees. I do use a few of the trees that the scenario sort of seeds in the map, just so that it blends in with the surrounding islands, because it wouldn't make sense that there would be, like, you know, these three islands with no trees, but every island has trees except for these three islands. That doesn't make any sense, right? So I did keep a few of the seeded trees. I don't think I actually kept very many of them in the original position. I definitely replanted pretty much all of them, but I do add a few back. But for the most part, I wanted to stick mostly with the small bushes. I was actually surprised that I was able to fit the start and stop of the single suspended roller coaster in that little area, that I was able to, you know, because you don't get very many track options, right? So just the fact that I was able to both heading towards the chain lift and also coming into it, just happened to get perfect alignment that, you know, the limited turns would actually line up was pretty cool. I mean, it wasn't just dumb luck. Part of it was design, but just the fact that I had just enough space. Like, if I was one tile short in any direction, I wouldn't have had enough space to do that. I also thought it was neat having the space shot going through the multiple coasters there. Both of them have a turn that sort of hits the perimeter of the space shot, though the steel coaster is maybe a little bit further away. But I still think it gives a really interesting look to it. Originally, I was going to have the bridge extend out from the entrance of that building, but after I was done building it and kind of looking at the area, I thought it would be more interesting if the bridge kind of came off from the side of the path and that the main entrance went down into the main area of the island, or the perimeter path of the island. Seems to be okay for pathfinding. Guests find their way to the third island just fine. I didn't have very many issues with population or lost guests, except for a few minor instances where, again, guests would get lost on their approach to the exit, even though they were not actually lost. They were, heading in the right direction the entire time. But even those issues, once I had sort of all the different transport rides and everything set up and all the layout ready to go, those issues alleviated as well. Yeah, this is definitely my favorite island. I just love how dense it is. There's just so much going on here, and that's great. I think it's so neat how much I was able to fit on this tiny island this time around. I've never done a build this dense on Trinity Islands before, so this is a first for me. But a lot of what I want to do with these videos is to really push my own envelope in terms of my builds, given that it is for a video and stuff. So a lot of times when I play these just for myself, I'll get lazy and I'll maybe do half a build, or maybe make one island really nice and then the other one's not so nice. So really going all out here has been an interesting challenge to kind of meet, to make these what I would deem acceptable for video material. Once again, moving into the third island here, the approach is to block out the island, set up the basic sort of core rides of the island, get everything set up and moving, and iron out any problems with the pathing, and then finally finish up with theming. Finally, we get to connect the monorail and the second station of the boat hire, which I was waiting so long to do this. I kept looking at that monorail stub that I had there and the closed monorail station. It was making me really sad, but I really wanted to finish that second island first before I moved on to setting up anything on the third island. But it was really taunting me the whole time that I was building everything on the second island, was that closed monorail station, because I was really excited to see what this would look like with the completed monorail track and things. For the third island, I figured I would do a little bit less development. So with the second island, I made it like pretty dense. And with the first island, that would be where like the sort of lowest buildings and the weakest rides are. With the third island, I decided it would be sort of less buildings but larger buildings. So there would be like the center building, that would be quite extensive, and then the food court and things like that. And then off to the side at like the low edge, or like the edges of the island, would be much smaller buildings, but quite a bit less of them. I was going to put more buildings on the side of the island with the monorail and things like that, and then on the other side of the island, where it was a little bit more flat, I figured that it would be interesting to have just a little bit more like sort of just decorative buildings. I hadn't used those mining town houses and stuff very much, and so I place a few of those there, and I don't really fill it much with rides, though I do put some rides a little bit closer to the water area there. I thought that flat area with the beach and sort of that shallow hill would be good for rides. As I was mentioning earlier, I wanted to put a second loop around that path so that there was a loop on either side. Getting the velocity attuned on this roller coaster was a little bit challenging. I had to do several iterations to get the loop lined up at the height that I wanted, and unfortunately from some angles it does clip the path, which is just, it's unavoidable with that loop, just due to the graphics required to do the loop with the suspended train style. In the end, the loop, like in terms of its size, is the same as a steel roller coaster loop, but because it's inverted in terms of where the track and the spine is of the track, it's actually smaller, but there's still two squares that go through it, though it honestly doesn't look like it, and it really should have just one tile space inside of it. But from a perspective that the loop has to be 4 tiles in length, there's just no way to square that circle, so you get what you get. But yeah, it does clip through the path at several angles, so for video purposes I'm probably just going to avoid those angles. I was gearing up now to do the theming on the third island, but first I wanted to put in some of those fountains. I had been kind of lax on that, and I wanted quite a bit more, to accent the roller coasters, accent the bridges, accent all the different water crossings and water features. For path connectivity on the third island, I figured that I would have all 4 edges of the island have connectivity into the center of the island. But of course, because all the hills and stuff are so steep, I did have to be a little innovative in terms of getting that all to work. For the front and the back, I use hills and then connectivity inside the building, and then on the edges I use kind of like a graduated incline type ascent. I now had enough of the infrastructure built that I felt I could move pretty heavily into theming. And so now, finally, in the I guess what I would consider the final stretch of the build, I believe that I did pretty much all of this in one sitting. Not the whole build as a whole, but pretty much just the theming for the third island. I pretty much just came in and was like, I want to finish this build and complete the theming. And so I just went hard and kept at it. For the third island, I wanted to invert the color scheme that I had been using. So instead of using sort of brown with black highlights, I decided I would do this side mostly black with brown highlights. However, I decided I would make the center building mostly brick with brown highlights. And so that way it would sort of counteract the doom and gloom of how much black there was. You would have all this black on the edges and things, and then in the center this sort of like nice white, and I threw some pinks in there too, just to sort of give a contrast of bright and dark, and so it's not just a black mess. Otherwise, I don't think you wouldn't be able to see very much, as black on black on black just looks like black. So you need other colors in there to sort of contrast with the black to give it depth. That's another reason why I haven't been using black tracks or anything like that also very much, as contrasting with black is not the easiest. And then of course getting everything to blend in, it only works in certain themes and certain settings. Otherwise it doesn't quite fit in, like that Batman ride, right? Everybody knows the Batman roller coaster, but that's a good example of great usage of black. This building on the backside pretty much just serves as connectivity. I had to make it that tall as the roller coaster would effectively have to go through it, as the roller coaster was just at the right height that I would want to make the roof if I hadn't made it that tall. So it just made sense to make it just a little bit taller, stick the roller coaster through it, and then it allowed a transition for all of the three paths from the back and then the left and the right side, which all converge inside that building. There is no direct connectivity from that building to the upper level, though. The guests have to go around to the left or the right and go up the sort of ascended path to the food court. Now can complete the perimeter path and finally get rid of that upper path that was the original path. I had debated keeping that there and kind of doing like a multi-level type system over here as well, but ultimately decided against it and would just keep the more simpler layout that I originally intended. Really going simple on that side of the island. I pretty much just flatten all the terrain, and that's just in preparation to place some of those mining town scenery items. I really felt that the other side of the island had just so much going on, and then there's of course the second island, which has so much going on. The first island, I think, had a really good balance, though. I really like the first island. I'm happy that that's going to be the screenshot. Put the Gravitron right next to the inverter ship, sort of like a little dock area, I guess, fairground dock, and then just complete the theming here. These are some of the only buildings in the scenario that don't actually have any purpose. They have no paths going through them or no connected rides. I had run out of flat rides. Otherwise, I probably would have stuck another flat ride there. I was debating putting the car ride there, but I just didn't really feel that building another car ride in that such a small space would end up looking all that great. I think the theming, just facade theming, was better. Plus, it provides a nice support for the roller coaster up above, which, if you watch my videos, you'll know that I am a big fan of adding some texture and varied heighting to supports. Always good to put different terrain underneath the roller coaster supports as well. Finish up with some bushes and trees, palm trees, my favorite. And that's pretty much it. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed this build, and here is the end result.